So I'm George Gates. I've been with the DNR since 2019.
I just recently started. My name is Sarah White. I'm one of the Will County CPOs. There's 3 of us there.
So like Sarah was saying, she's out of Will County. There's 3 of them. I'm assigned to DuPage County. There's only 1 of me. So if you guys ever reach out, either I'm off or I could be somewhere in Will County, Kankakee, Grundy, Kendall, dealing with something else. Best way to get a hold of me is if you text, that's great. Leave a voicemail, email. I'll leave my cards somewhere on the table, so if you guys want to grab them. We're kind of going to go over a lot of like the nuisance wildlife stuff you guys will get calls to probably when it comes to like trapping, injured animals, what the public can and can't do, what you guys can and can't do kind of thing. And I'll start with this. The thing with the wildlife law, trapping laws, nuisance laws, there's never a yes and no answer. It's a very gray area. So as soon as you think you understand it, something comes up and you don't. So we'll try to make it as clear and articulate as we can, but a lot of it's going to be, as the saying goes, clear as mud. So with that, we'll kind of start getting into it.
So what is nuisance wildlife? I think it's really important to kind of address that because I'm sure you guys get calls whenever people interact with any wildlife. For example, if there's a coyote, walking through your yard, we get calls for that too. People text us, they email us. They're always concerned, asking, what should I do? Can I remove it? Can you guys come get it? No, we don't do any of that stuff. I'm sure the Forest Preserve deals with that as well. What we determine a nuisance is if there's any physical or financial damage to property. I'm in Will County, so that does also entail like crops or livestock if there's an issue down there. They pose a health risk to the community or livestock. Obviously, Amy just talked about that with the bats, but it is also possible with any other wildlife animal. And the issue with that is that the reason that we're here and we're here to talk about it is because most of the animals are protected through the wildlife code. So it's important to kind of know how to navigate that, especially with police officers. You guys also deal a lot with wildlife. People are asking you. So it's natural that not everyone knows. I mean, before I had this job, I also didn't know. So that's sort of why we're here. I try to tell people that there is no like landowner. Like if there's a wild animal in your property and it's your land, technically the people of the state of Illinois own wildlife. So it's very confusing when people are like, hey, come get this coyote and put it in the forest preserve. That's not how that works.
Yeah,
so
like all the animals are basically, all the wild animals are put in a trust for the Illinois, for the general public. So nobody owns the animals.
So the number one thing I want to hit hard is that removing wildlife is the absolute last option. So if you contact Willowbrook Wildlife, I'm sure they'll talk to you about it too. We try to kind of coach people and let them know, hey, there's other things you can do before you go to that extreme. The 3 ways that you could do is causing a disturbance. Most animals, like for example, if there's turkeys or they're roosting in a tree or something like that, if you make it uncomfortable for them, like loud noises, bright lights, they tend to stray away from that. Same with coyotes, same with foxes, any animal, they usually tend to find a place that's quiet. So if you can make any sort of disturbance, that goes a long way. If that doesn't work, loud noises, flashing lights, a lot of animals don't like that either. Most animals are active at night. They're active at night because it's dark. They feel secure, safe in the dark. Use flashing lights. We've asked that. Some people have found a lot of success with that, especially during like breeding season, which we're coming up on. And then removing food. That is a really, really big one. Some people, I have had people, especially in Will County, that we're dealing with coyotes, and like there's a lot of coyotes in the area, and they're like, there's no food though. Right, but if you have like a bird feeder or squirrel feeder, or you're feeding, which everyone is allowed to do, you're allowed to feed the birds. Those are going to attract squirrels, birds. Those may attract skunks.
Turkeys.
And then the more that you attract a prey animal, you're going to attract predators. So just because you're not feeding them directly, putting food out for them, doesn't mean that you're not kind of contributing to the problem, which I'm not saying you shouldn't feed wildlife, but if you're having a problem, that's usually one of the first things I ask, like, hey, do you have any bird feeders? They're going to bring squirrels, and then that's kind of like the food chain coming, and then that's why you have those bigger predators come around.
Before we move on to this, I know everyone's here from different municipalities and towns. Is anybody familiar with any municipalities or towns that have ordinances on the books that prevent feeding wildlife?
Where are you from? Do you know
Okay.
what they are? Could you kind of if you know, don't mean to put you on the spot.
We do have an ordinance that's feeding any old wildlife.
Okay.
We had a few residents. We did have, like you said, we did have a whole food chain to a few of the residents. They had, at one point in time, 20 bird feeders on their property.
Yeah. And I'm sure you guys have all gotten calls about the neighbor that his backyard or his front yard is littered with Canada geese because every morning he goes out and throws corn or bread, and all the neighbors are complaining because there's 50 geese on his lawn pooping everywhere. Mm-hmm. And as far as on the Illinois side goes, it is not illegal to feed geese. So our hands are pretty much tied. We get involved whenever deer are involved. So our wildlife feeding laws pertain to deer. So if deer are being fed or can be included in the feed, then we can start enforcing our feeding wildlife statutes. However, if you're in the middle of a residential area and the person's got like a 6-foot fence around their backyard, if there's no pictures of deer eating that feed, there's not much we can do other than talk to them and be like, hey, you understand bird flu's going around, this is gonna help spread it, you're gonna start seeing a lot of dead birds, geese. I think they even said it can go to like cats and some domestic animals, so it's just one of those things where we can educate as much as we can, but as far as enforcement goes, our hands are kind of tied at deer.
Well, I have had that. I'm currently dealing with an issue in Plainfield with turkeys, and that's something that got brought up. Like, hey, well, they're feeding wildlife. Correct. But there's nothing I can do about that because there's no deer involved. So that's a really big thing that people don't really know is that at the state level, we don't have anything like George said unless it's deer, and you'd have to provide us proof. We can't just go based on hearsay and start talking to somebody about that if there's not any actual tangible proof.
Yeah.
This is not nuisance wildlife. I have gotten tons of calls about baby wildlife, especially deer, which I live up north, so I understand, but the further south that I go, because I am in Will County and we do also patrol like areas like Kankakee and Grundy, it's more rural down there. I don't ever get calls about that here, but when I'm up here in DuPage and northern Will County, they're like, oh, there's a deer and it's been abandoned. No, it hasn't.
Yeah.
Just leave it. And a lot of people don't know that, so a big part of our job is educating. And I do refer people sometimes to Willowbrook Wildlife because you guys are the experts. You guys know more about wildlife than we do in that sense. So I'll tell them like, hey, this is a place you can contact. They'll kind of walk you through what normal behaviors like that. But I know the number one that we get is deer and also rabbits. Just mom's not going to be around during the day. This is just the normal part of how they live in their life cycle. A lot of people will say like, oh, well, I brought them inside. And I'm like, no, go put them back outside. Or sometimes they have pets, which I know that can be an issue too, but it's like they'll leave fairly soon. I mean, if you just walk your dog on a leash or something like that, that tends to be, we try to promote living with wildlife. Some people see it as even this as a nuisance, but it's not a nuisance. They'll get up and move, especially if they see that you have a dog. That problem tends to solve itself.
And with this, I mean, when people come across baby deer, baby raccoons, baby possums, they're like, oh, they're orphaned. And then they end up keeping them as a pet. I'm sure you guys have all responded to houses, and you walk in, there's a raccoon, there's a possum, there's a skunk even. So I know I've worked with some of the municipalities, and they had foxes. Granted, this part of the wildlife code that gets gray, it's not illegal to own these things. However, how you obtain it and the permits you have determine the legality. So if you ever have any doubts when you come across someone's house and you see something like that, like I said, give me a call. I can look into their permits to see whether or not they're even issued the permits, and we can kind of look into it from that way. But owning any wildlife generally is a no-no.
Yeah, most people don't know that you need certain permits. So you've exhausted all your things, you've removed the food, you've tried the disturbances, loud noises, the flashing lights. Some of them, I think for certain animals, you can also do like is it like chemical stuff where they eat something to deter them from coming?
So yeah, we'll kind of get into, I think on the slide we've got some ways to legally like harass wildlife that's a nuisance that's causing problems, especially when it comes to Canada geese.
So we've exhausted all those options, so this is where we are now, which is the things that you can do. So the main things that we're here to talk about is you are obviously entitled to hire a nuisance wildlife operator, but that usually goes, you have to pay for that out of pocket. So the general public, when they're asking for something like that and they're like, hey, can you remove this? And we're like, no, you're gonna have to contact the wildlife trapper, because some people are under the misconception that we remove wildlife. We do not.
Yeah, we don't go out, we don't set traps, we don't remove wildlife when it comes to that. I mean, I know you guys, like, you hear stories when the cougars come into town, or the black bears, or the wolves. The DNR, we might be following them, but the USDA are the ones going out there and tranking them and then relocating them. We don't have anything to do with relocation of animals.
Some people don't want to go that route. They don't want to hire. I've never actually, no one's ever actually told me, so I don't know what they charge for that.
Yeah, I mean, like, if I think we might have a link to the website, like Living with Wildlife. It talks about the nuisance wildlife operators. You can just kind of find one. But when you're talking to the public, the big thing you gotta let them know is that if they're hired, they're gonna capture these animals and they will kill them. There is no, oh, we're gonna save all the squirrels. They are going to kill everything that enters their trap. So some people, I'm sure everyone's dealt with them, like, they love the animals, they just don't love them on their property. They don't want them killed. And once you kind of tell them, be like, well, if we catch them, they're gonna get killed. That can change their behavior as far as what they do, the food they put out, because they don't want to see them killed. So it's just one of those tools we have in our toolbox to be like, well, if you keep feeding them, they're going to get killed. So.
And then the second option here is every landowner is also, if they don't want to hire someone because they have to pay for them, you are able to obtain your own permit, and we'll talk about that more, and then you can kind of remove them yourself. And there's exceptions to that, because usually, like George was just saying, if someone goes out there to trap any animal, it's getting euthanized. Yeah. Same thing kind of with the NARP permit, and again, we'll talk about that when we get into it.
Have any of you guys heard of the NARP permits, the nuisance animal removal permits from our department? All right, that's good to know. So some of the legal definitions, that we'll kind of just cover that we want to hit on: government body, so any of the agencies that are here, because we're going to get into what the Class C license is, as far as the different kind of nuisance licenses. The permit's nuisance wildlife control permit, and then take. So take is really the one I kind of want to focus the most on, because this is the most all-encompassing. So take means hunt, shoot, pursue, lure, kill, destroy, capture, gig, spear, trap, or ensnare, or attempt to do so. So basically meaning, if you do something like to throw a rock at a duck that's pooping on your driveway, you could be charged with unlawful take, because you're attempting to kill it, you're attempting to harass it, you're attempting to do something to injure that bird. Even if it doesn't end up dying, you can still be charged with the unlawful take of one of the protected species. So there's nothing wrong with, you got the whisk broom and you're shooing them away, you got a hose, you're spraying them. Those are all deterrent methods you can use to kind of harass and scare them away. We even say for coyotes, I know that's probably one of the biggest ones that you guys probably get biggest complaints that people are up in arms out, is I tell people, get pepper spray. Coyotes hate pepper spray. So if you have one that's getting close to you and you spray it, it will leave you alone forever. Michigan did a study on this, and no coyote that got sprayed came back. So this is our administrative code. So this is basically everything about nuisance wildlife control permits and the laws, what it allows, permits, license. This is all accessed through the DNR's website. And it goes into bats, game birds, migratory birds, business practices, prohibited methods of take, disposing, euthanizing. We're not going, section by section here. More so kind of put this out here that this is where the laws are pertaining to what is and isn't allowed for nuisance trapping. So the government entities, these Class C licenses, this list, yes, it's old. This is the only one that was available to us at the time. But basically, let's see if we can click it. If your municipality was ever issued this license, that basically says if you're operating under this, you can set the traps yourself. So you don't need to hire a nuisance trapper company. You don't need to apply for a NARP because your agency might already have the Class C license. With these, I mean, there's Class A, B, C, D, and F. The Class C license allows the government entities to take basically any of the mammals and game birds. Migratory birds, you need a separate license for, but as far as anything else, you'd be covered under the Class C license. Now, if you as the agency are going to go set the traps, I mean, some of the things you got to just keep in mind yourself is that you have to the traps have to be checked daily, and the animals have to be removed from the traps. You can't let the animal die in the trap, and that guidance goes for even the general public. The traps have to be checked once every calendar day. If you let the animal die in the trap, you're probably going to get some tickets. I'm a big advocate of, I don't think it's humane to let a squirrel die on the roof in a trap for 5 days in the summer heat. I think that's completely wrong. And if I come up to a trap and all I see is a squirrel carcass, you're going to get coupons. But, it's just, like, nobody wants, like, we don't want to go out there and kill wildlife any more than anybody else does. But there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way. And nothing deserves to suffer needlessly. All right, we'll go to the next one if that doesn't work. So some of the exemptions, like they were talking about bats, if you see a bat, you can just catch it and release it. You don't need a permit, you don't need permission. Like I said, if you were bit, if there's a scratch or something, capture it, get it tested. You never just, you want to get that taken care of, like Amy was saying. I don't think we need to go, this is all about bats.
Right. Amy went over it, which was nice. Thanks, Amy.
So this is basically the harassing of migratory birds like geese, mostly. I guess it could work with mallards and wood ducks, but usually it's geese. This is probably the one big thing to touch on. I'm sure you guys get calls about, because now is the time they're going to start nesting, right? They're going to be on roofs. They're going to be in planters. They're going to be in front of businesses. So if there is a non-active nest, destroy the nest before the eggs are laid. Because once the eggs are there, now you need special permits to remove that nest. So if you guys are getting calls like, hey, we got this goose nest and it's right in front of this business where everyone walks, see if they can get rid of it before the eggs are there. Otherwise, they're going to have to hire, I can't endorse anybody, but the only person that's coming to mind are goose chasers. I know they're pretty prominent in the area as far as being able to destroy the eggs. Noise-making devices, like, cap guns. Like when people call me and ask me, like, I don't know what your ordinances allow as far as, because fireworks are illegal in Illinois, but like blank shells, cap guns, noise-making devices, laser lights, things that are going to make it uncomfortable for these birds or anything to be in the area. Chemical repellents is registered as non-lethal, control birds. So, mothballs, ammonia stuff.
Make sure to be careful to explain that because I did have someone ask me. Some people do use access the site and know their way around it, and they asked about the chemical repellents and we're asking for like poison, and I'm like, no, you can't do that. This is just a non-lethal way, which it does say in there, but some people will ask you anyway, and some people, I'm sure the municipalities know this, will ask different questions to different officers to get a question they want. So make sure you're communicating with your department as well.
And yeah, that's a big thing. I mean, poison, you can't poison wildlife. Like, if you suspect any poison, I mean, like I know we can send it to the labs, necropsies to verify poison was used, but if you suspect any poison, generally if there's poison, it's going to be more than one dead animal. Like, you're going to have everything in the area dying. You're going to have squirrels, you're going to have raptors, you're going to have anything and everything end up dying because poison's being used. So some of the exceptions continuing with like the EAGLE, the Endangered Species Protection Act, we don't really have to worry too much about this. If it's an eagle nest, leave it alone. That's basically what it comes down to. I
don't see that problem mostly up here north, but more towards where I'm in Will County and Southern Will. People are complaining about they'll have chickens and they'll complain about the hawks and they're like, can I kill this hawk? You cannot.
So this part was good. I get a couple calls like this every year around this time, especially buildings that have courtyards, because birds aren't the smartest when it comes to laying eggs. Sometimes they'll do it 2 stories, 3 stories, 7 stories up. Luckily, these goslings are like little tennis balls, so they bounce. Like, it's true. But the thing is, we can't always go out there and save these things, because sometimes you got to let the parents know, be like, it's not safe to build a nest here. So if all your goslings died because they don't survive the fall, guess what? Next year, these parents aren't going to come back and nest here. But if we keep going out there and taking them off the roof, they're going to keep coming back and nesting there because it's a safe place to nest. So kind of survival of the fittest to an extent. But with that said, like, they jump into a courtyard. Now the goslings, they have nowhere to go because they can't fly, and there's just walls on 4 sides. Anybody can just go in there, put them in a box, and bring them immediately outside. You don't need a special permit. You don't need to call us. Just round them up and bring them right outside immediately to the other side of the wall. Don't put them in your car and drive to Indiana and release them on a farm. So the NARP permits, so these are more so when you're engaging with the public and talking to them, and they're like, they don't want to pay someone to come do it themselves. They can do it themselves for free. Now, I would say the biggest holdup I see when I talk about NARPs is when I tell them, be like, you're going to have to kill it after you capture it, because you can't just go to the forest preserve. You can't just go to this random woods. You can't go to the park district and release it there without permission from them to release it. And then usually they're like, well, we don't want to kill them. Be like, well, I can only tell you what you can and can't do. What you do after I leave here, that's on you. So that's probably the biggest hang-up that people are going to have, is disposing and dispatching the animal after it's been trapped. And just know, like, if you come across like a house and you see traps, like there's going to be no way unless you ask the homeowner, be like, hey, can I see your nuisance permit? But if you want to give me a call first, I can always look in our system to see if they've been issued one. And then if they haven't, like, I don't mind going out there talking to them about the traps, educating them on the NARP permits, or walking you through any enforcement action that you want, if you want to take. But the NARP itself, it's just a free permit available to anyone in the state of Illinois that wants to remove nuisance wildlife themselves. And if it's squirrels, raccoons, skunks, possums, it's an online permit. They generally get auto-approved now. Now, if it's anything larger, if they're trying to put in a NARP for coyotes, foxes, deer, turkey, it's not auto-approved. The biologist will get a hold of them and be like, why do you need it for turkeys? Why do you need it for coyotes? But generally, the smaller mammals, it'll automatically get approved.
So those are the 2 ways that you can.
And that's the website, wild.wildlifeillinois.org, if you guys never been to the website. It's just a good source for people who have problems with wildlife, for deterrent methods, finding a nuisance operator, applying for the NARP. And I don't know if that website gives links to our information.
So it does.
Okay.
If you go to that website, it does have the application for the NARP, but it also does have, if you're looking to remove something bigger, like George was talking about, or you don't want to do it yourself, we can't endorse any removal service, so it'll show you the location, and you can kind of click, and it'll give you a map of like the different removing agencies that are there. You can look them up, make sure that they have all the things that they're supposed to have, and kind of ask. Some of them will also kind of talk to you about it and give you, other ideas as to how to deter them before they're sent out. Like I said, this is when you're trying to remove an animal, that's like a last case scenario, which is why we try to tell people. When some people get very frustrated very easily when they're like, this keeps happening every year, and it's like, yeah, but if you contact someone, it's going to get euthanized. And again, our job is mostly to kind of encourage people to live with wildlife. I mean, this is this is something that we're supposed to do, and a lot of people, especially it seems like up north, are like, well, I don't want them in my yard. They're going to get there regardless. So why not live with them, especially if there's something you can do to deter them from that. That website also has a lot of links onto, it'll specifically has like animals in Illinois. So it's got like your rabbit, your possums, and if you click on every one of those, it'll give you specific deterrents that you can try, especially if, you're trying to just target maybe rabbits and you don't want to target like skunks or attract anything like that. It does a really good job of doing that, and it also talks about like what is injured wildlife. So if you have a question and you're like, I don't know who I should contact about this, is it injured wildlife or is this something completely different? Do you need to get a permit for this? So it's a really good website. That's the one that I give to officers, and then if someone from the general public also calls me, I also give them that information as well.
Yeah.
It's very useful.
And kind of, going on, Sarah just talked about like the injured wildlife part of it. I'm sure you guys get calls all the time like, oh, we've got this coyote, its leg's broken, or deer, something's wrong with it. Who knows? Generally, if we get called out, we're just going to put it down right then and there. No rehabilitation center takes adult deer. So if there's a deer with a broken leg, we just put it down. We're fortunate enough to have Willowbrook right there for, small game, and, they've been great. But as far as adult deer, the only option for them is euthanizing. So, I know we've had calls like, the CWD, like the neurological diseases in deer, if you guys get calls about any type of disease-related thing, if we go out there and it's safe to do so, we're gonna dispatch it. And then maybe if our biologists want the testing, the samples, we'll collect that for them. I know this is the time of year where you guys are probably gonna get calls on like fish kills. Weather's warming up, temperatures are going up, oxygen levels are depleting, so you're gonna get a lot of calls about like someone poisoned this water because all the fish are dead. Probably not. It's just what happens. Now, you'll also get calls about a whole bunch of waterfowl dead on a pond. And before bird flu came around, it was just botulism. Like once one thing dies in there, they all stick around and they all start dying. And we don't have any way of removing all these dead animals. So, these HOAs or these corporations, whoever owns that body of water, they'd have to hire someone to come clean it up. We're not going to come out there and clean it up. Same with a dead deer. Like there's a dead deer floating in the lake. Well, we're not going to come get the deer out and dispose of the deer. Like this falls on either the municipalities or those private citizens to hire someone to remove all these dead animals.
While you're talking about that, we also don't remove any deceased animals. I get a lot of calls about that. Like there's a deer that's dead here, or literally any animal, especially with avian flu going around. That seems to be a big deal, because I have had calls where like maybe a goose strays from the flock and then it's got avian flu and it dies. We don't remove any wildlife. I know I've gotten a few calls in Will County and like, can you come take this? No, I cannot. Not because I don't want to, but because our job is unique in that we don't have like a building, like a normal police agency. So we work out of our truck. So there's nowhere I could put it. We usually just tell them to use gloves, double bag them, get rid of them. I also don't know of any agency that offers that sort of service. So a lot of people don't want to deal with that. So I try to kind of let them know, if we go out there to dispatch any animal, it's up to you to actually deal with it, because there's nowhere for us to take it.
Yeah.
And then sometimes all of these things that you do, even if you get a permit, don't work. So I have a good example seems like this year we've had a rough patch with turkeys. I don't know what's going on, but we've gotten a lot of calls about them. I know George has dealt with them too. I'm currently dealing with an issue where it looks like these turkeys came in. There's a hen with her 4 babies. They stuck around. People had bird feeders, so no one was actually feeding them at first. They were just bird feeders. And they were also feeding squirrels, like they had squirrel feed in there too, and they just stuck around. So then when people saw them and noticed them, then they started feeding them. And that's really all it takes for you to kind of ruin that for everyone in the neighborhood, because they're just going to stay. You know, they're smart animals in the way they're like, if I don't have to forage for my own food and it's just here, we're going to stick around. So now they're here in this neighborhood. They've been here in this neighborhood. They're causing more property damage than anything. I know the turkeys that George dealt with were actually trying to injure people. These turkeys are not that. They're yearlings. They're small. But they're there. So, you know, they are flying on top of cars. They're scratching up cars. They're chasing cars. They're sitting on people's decks. They're pooping all over their yard. So some people, you know, enough people got really upset about it, contacted me. I kind of, you know, did our little spiel like, hey, you can contact a wildlife trapper that'll come out there and do it for them, or you can apply for one yourself. But the caveat with the NARP is that sometimes the biologist will have to go out there from DNR and assess the situation before they can give you a permit. So some people also don't like that takes a long time, because there's only a certain amount of biologists, just like there's only a certain amount of us in the
There's
state.
a lot less biologists than there are CPOs.
So they're really busy. So sometimes that will take a long time. So we try to tell, like, prep people for that. Like, hey, it's not that we don't care, but there's a certain way to do it. And again, the biologists are just like all of us. They're not in the business of we want to euthanize animals. So if there's a way that we can deter them, we'll do that. They'll do that first before they sign off and like, yes, you can have a permit. So that's kind of where we were at. And then they contacted someone with a Class C permit to get rid of them. And that person didn't want to deal with it because turkeys are very hard to catch. They're very hard to catch. They kind of didn't want to deal with it. And now we're like kind of in the standstill that if, you know, I had to go out and speak with them and basically tell them like, hey, just so you guys know, because they kept talking about like, put them in a field, put them on private property, take them away from here. And I was like, all right, Tio, if they go out there and we issue this license, they're getting all euthanized, all 5 of them. So that kind of put a hold to it. And now we're kind of trying to removing the food, kind of disturbing them when they're roosting. But this all started because you were feeding them. So I tell people, if you don't want to have this problem, don't feed them. It's the same thing with any animal. It's the same thing if you're tossing out scraps or food, it's going to attract skunks, it's going to attract possums, and then people are complaining. They're like, why is this skunk here? I mean, skunks smell bad. We all know that. But if there's food around there and you keep feeding them, like I know a lot of people will feed cats, like the feral cats, that food will also attract skunks and possums, and raccoons, especially raccoons. I feel like that's the one thing that people are the most upset about is raccoons and skunks, especially because raccoons will find a place in your home if they can, and they'll have a nest, and then that's another thing that you'd have to deal with. So
Yeah.
we are available to you guys, and George was kind of talking about it. I don't think a lot of people know that our numbers are on the website, but you can also text us. And sometimes email and text is easier because sometimes someone will be calling me and I'm on the phone and someone's calling me. I can't just hang up on that person and answer this call. And if you don't leave a message, I can't just randomly call you back, especially if I don't know what it is that you're asking about. So we harp on text us or email us. We usually tend to get back a lot sooner than being on the phone because we work out of our truck, so we do a lot of driving. So something to think about when you talk to people, if you ever refer them to us, shoot them a text. But these are the resources. We did talk about Wildlife Illinois. The DNR website also has the ad rules for the people for the municipalities that talk to the community. They can also look up there themselves and kind of do it. And then we also encourage them to kind of look at your local ordinances because usually those are a lot more strict than ours. Like I said, the state rule doesn't have anything against people feeding wildlife unless deer are involved,
No.
and usually I feel like that's not the problem, and there's kind of nothing that we can do about that. But we do have some people, mostly, at least I don't know if George has dealt with them, but in southern Will County, I've had people complain and ask if they can get a permit to kill a deer out of season because it's destroying their crops. And that's always has to be done with a biologist, and they have to come and assess the damage.
So, and I mean, we included that roadkill one because I'm sure if you guys get calls, any Illinois resident can claim roadkill. So it's kind of whoever hits it gets first dibs. If you don't want it, then whoever passes by can take it.
Yeah, like a salvage tag.
Yeah. So outside of the nuisance laws, some of the other wildlife laws, I kind of touched on a little bit. Like we enforce all like the hunting, the fishing, the boating, all those laws, but we don't get calls to people's houses like you guys do. We don't get dispatched to anything, hardly anything. Like everything that we find out about is either from the public. They call us and say, hey, my neighbor is doing this, or I saw this guy's posting this online. So that's basically how we kind of come across a lot of the stuff we do. So like if you guys are ever out in the field and you see something, and I know, all these are state statutes. It's all written in the state law. So, your municipality police officers, they can definitely do enforcement on it. They can write the tickets. But a lot of people they're not comfortable with the wildlife law and how it works. So if there's any questions that you see, call me up, call Sarah up. Like, we're happy to sit down, walk you through it, talk with you. And if we're able to, come out there and kind of handle it ourselves as well. But just more so know that there are laws there that protect basically every animal out there. Chipmunks, not really.
Why do you bring that up every time? He has a vendetta against the chipmunks. I don't understand why. Because when he told me that, my mouth dropped. I'm like, who's gonna want a permit to kill chipmunks? Apparently, a lot of people do.
They burrow under driveways.
The biologists talk about it often.
Yeah. And as far as the bird goes, this is just a fun little trivia question. Does anybody know the 3 birds that aren't protected?
Willowbrook, you can't answer.
Yeah, Willowbrook can't answer. Because if you go to Willowbrook, they have these birds listed as ones they do not take. All right, Anthony, what do you got?
Pigeons.
Pigeons, yeah.
That's sparrowfish, like the brown ones.
The house sparrow, the common house sparrow, yeah.
And
Starling.
Yep.
So
Good job.
that's your ASA.
That doesn't count. He's like your best friend.
But yeah, I mean, so because I'll get calls about that, like pigeons and starlings, and they're like, yeah, I mean, they're not protected. I mean.
We did also want to just kind of give you guys also the time. I know we talked about the nuisance permits, but a lot of people don't know what we do, especially up north. If you guys have any other questions? No?
So we get a lot of geese and ducks in the sewers, goslings, I guess, and ducklings. There's a lot of us that'll go down in there and get them and bring. If it's a situation where like they keep going in, what are can we relocate them to different water, or are we legally supposed to just like kind of take them out and drop them? If they're in a not safe, in an area where it's not safe, where they're probably going to get hit.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking them and putting them across the street, or like.
If there's a pond nearby,
'Cause
yeah, like that's okay.
The problem you'll run into is if you relocate them too far away from their parents, the parents won't find them. So, like when I was talking about in the courtyard, like once you round up these goslings or these ducklings, the parents are going to be freaking out, like, where are my kids? So the quickest thing you do is bring them to the outside, tilt the box, or don't even tilt the box yet, but like keep it upright so they start chirping. Hopefully the parents will eventually find them. But if you start going too far away, they're not going to find them, and then now you have orphan wildlife, and now you're bringing them to Willowbrook because, they've been abandoned because the parents just can't find them.
Right.
But yeah, if they just keep going in there, I mean, the optics don't look good because you don't want them to keep just dying in there, and the public's like, what are you doing? But so I just wouldn't go too far away. Don't let the firefighters drive off too far with them.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
We had a bald eagle. We have several, and it was deceased. I don't know what ate it, but we had called. I think, isn't there a law like you can't possess a bald eagle or feather, or it's like some crazy? Like,
So yeah, so even if it's deceased, you should call one of us. You guys make friends with your CPOs. They do call us the conversation police.
They do.
Especially Jordan.
They do.
But yeah, like be friends with your CPOs, because we do a lot of the wildlife stuff too, but we also assist in regular law enforcement issues. Like we'll go out there. I work a lot with the Will County Forest Preserve. We work a lot together, even if it's in their jurisdiction and they ask me to come, I'll just go over there, even just as, for backup. But yeah, so if you have a deceased I believe it's any actual like
Any bald or golden eagle.
yeah, you can't possess, and that extends to like hawks.
Yep.
You can't possess any of their feathers.
Yeah, even in the median of a major roadway, we wanted to be respectful.
Right.
And when we called, it was like, well, no one can possess a feather, but just double bag it and toss it in the dumpster. And we were like, wait, what? You know what? Is that what?
Usually you're supposed to call your CPO because we send them.
Yeah, the eagles get sent to a repository by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Like hawks, they can just be bagged up and tossed. But eagles, golden eagles, yeah, we have to send their carcasses over to the Fish and Wildlife.
Same thing with possessing, just on the topic, like deer, like deer antlers. Those have to be tagged too if you're going to be out there taking those.
So, but is there any other questions?
Anthony?
Yeah, I just want to comment, just Anthony Russo from the State Attorney's Office. You guys talked about like not checking on traps and things like that. Just remember for everybody, the animal cruelty law is, by statute, no person or owner may beat, cruelly treat, torment, starve, overwork, or otherwise abuse any animal. So, I mean, if you do see a situation where somebody leaves an animal inside a cage, or somebody's trying to get rid of coyotes because they're shooting BB guns at it, it might fall under the statute of animal cruelty. So always be thinking outside of the box, because there are these like hunting and taking laws, but make sure you're thinking about even the more broad laws that we have. In Illinois, fun fact, Illinois has the fourth best animal protection laws in the country, because they're written so broadly. So just if you have any questions, just reach out to the state's attorney's office or any other agency that's familiar with animals, like DuPage Animal Services.
Thank you. I had,
Multiple part question on permit. First of all, how long are they good for?
So which permits? So are you talking about like the NARP?
Yep.
So generally 45 days. Every 45 days they have to get kind of renewed. And that's all done online. Now the biologists, they can extend that timeline, I think, out to 60 days. But with the NARPs themselves, yeah, it's generally 45 days, and then at the end of it, you will submit it back to the biologist with what you took. Like, I captured, because your NARP will spell out you're only allowed to trap squirrels. So at the end of your 45 days, you'll send it back to them saying, I trapped and killed 15 squirrels. And then if you need a new permit, you just apply for a new one.
so the NARP is online, so you're going to have to like make your own like username and ID, so you can check like all that stuff is written on there too. They don't really do anything through paper. They're trying to step away from the paper. So that all that information will be on the.
They have the permit. Who enforces what they're catching? And what is it the honor system? Like, hey, I'm going to trap squirrels, but no, I'm really going to trap skunks.
So here's the thing. Yes, essentially it's the honor system, but you do have these nosy neighbors, and usually if you've got a trap out there, they're gonna say something.
Yeah.
So if they see that there's an animal deceased in there, or they think maybe, I don't want to give you too much information, but there's also sport trapping as well, and there's a season for that. So like if someone tells me like, hey, I know that some people are actually really well versed in that, and will be like, I know it's not like trapping season anymore, and I see this animal and it's been here for days. Usually people will reach out to us, or they'll reach out to their local municipality, and then they'll usually refer them to us. But essentially, yeah.
Okay, and what's the penalty for not having a permit?
So it's not just one thing.
It's like a multiple thing.
So the penalty, I think, off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure it's a petty offense ticket, $195 for trapping without a nuisance permit. Now, but if they're trapping without a permit, I mean, now depending on the season, you could look at unlawful take, trapping out of season, failure to tag, failure to check, failure to get permission, trapping without permission. Like, once you've opened the door to one wildlife violation, you've just opened the door to a half dozen, if not more,
It also
different
depends on
violations.
what you're trapping.
Like, and if you ever come up to a house and he's like, oh yeah, I've got a nuisance permit, or you're not sure, you get a hold of me, I'll tell you exactly what's on his permit that he can be trapping. And what happens is most people are like, oh, raccoons, and they trap a skunk, and they're like, I don't want to touch that, so they let it die in the trap. That's what I see a lot of too, skunks dying in traps. because no one wants to let it out.
Buzz.
I should probably know this, but is this something we can charge, or does it have to go through you guys if it's ILCS?
You guys
We can.
Yeah, so all the wildlife laws, I mean, fishing is 515, wildlife is 520, so a lot of these are in the state laws. As far as like the ad rules, I'm fairly confident you can charge these ad rules as well. I just don't know how you guys would do it on your citations.
You just, yeah, it depends on yours. Our site, we still write paper citations.
Yes, everything we do is paper.
Ours is different than yours. But that's the thing is, I used to be an ACO here, so that was the most frustrating part, is that when municipalities would contact DCAS, they would be like, oh, well, I can't do that. And it's like, now as a CPO, I'm like, yeah, you can do that. And if you don't know, ask one of us. We'll go over there, we'll meet you, we'll help you kind of figure it out, because we don't know what your tickets look like. So we don't know if there's a spot for ad rule and then your authorizing section. Like, we can help you with all that stuff. And we encourage people to do it, because that's the best way to get them to stop. Is, hey, you're gonna get a $195 ticket if you don't stop. And usually when you're trapping, I think every time you do it, it gets, I think the fine goes for like higher up.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things carry civil penalties, like the feeding wildlife. As a petty offense ticket, $195, but you could be fined for up to $1,000. So if you have somebody that keeps doing it and they don't get the message after one, then you can start assessing the civil fines up to $1,000. So, like, and so all of our fines, they're conservation offenses, they start at $195 and go up to $250, and that's not including civil penalties.
Yeah. And also, I encourage you I believe where are you from? Darren. Like, you guys should look into your local ordinances, because I know DuPage has different ordinances than the state does, and you can always do more, tack on more, get people to stop.
They charges if we could do, obviously, misdemeanors we could do, but.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they're done in traffic court. All our conservation offenses are done in
Yeah,
traffic
it's all
court.
heard in traffic court.
Yeah. Any other questions?
All right.
Thank you.
I want to kind of piggyback off of what we do or don't do in terms of wildlife. So we also don't assist with nuisance wildlife. We're usually just counseling people, giving them the same resources that George and Sarah shared with you. We do respond to sick and injured wildlife, and we're happy to assist you during hours with that as well. One of the things I think that can be confusing for members of the public is sometimes they see wildlife that looks sick or they see is visibly injured, and they think that we can easily come out and do something about it, and that's not always the case. I'll share one example of, we were receiving calls about a deer in Wheaton that allegedly had a broken leg, and it had been laying in this one spot for days, and finally the residents called us and said, well, you need to come out and get this. Well, for one thing, animals are very resilient creatures, sometimes more than humans, and guess what? By the time we went out just to do a drive-by and see what was going on with that deer, it had already gotten up and walked away. We've been on a call with a fox that had a trap on its foot. That fox, we got it cornered into a backyard. It scaled a 6-foot fence to get away from us with a trap on its foot. So sometimes chasing after wildlife isn't really the best use of our time, and not to mention that sometimes puts not only the animal in further danger, but people in danger too. We wouldn't have wanted to maybe chase that deer into traffic, right? So we're usually counseling people to just kind of let nature take its course in some situations. I know it's hard when it's happening in your backyard, but a lot of times these things are happening and we don't even see it. Now, if it's an animal that is fairly contained, fairly immobile, and it's unincorporated, we do respond during hours to go out and try to contain that animal and then figure out if it needs to go get help or if we're going to be humanely euthanizing it. We don't do wildlife sick or injured after hours unless it is a public safety concern, for example, rabies. So, does anybody have questions about what we can assist you with when it comes to wildlife? Okay. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. We get a lot of phone calls about that. We're also talking to residents, and DuPage Conservation Center will probably touch a lot more on what's happening with wildlife in terms of illnesses. But if an animal has a healthy immune system, sometimes they can fight that off, and sometimes they can't. I have seen plenty of posts on nextdoor.com or some of the Facebook groups where people say, I'm going to go try to medicate it, or I'm going to go try to do this, and we're really discouraging people from doing that, even though mange can be treated. Treating a wild animal is not something we're encouraging people to do. Once again, we're letting them know that it happens. I know it's tough to see in your own backyard, but we are not encouraging the public to interact with those animals. So. Yeah, so I think, did George and Sarah walk out? Oh, yeah, did you want to address?
I mean, so it's tough, right? Because mange, unless you can basically eradicate the den, as soon as you treat it and release it, they're going to get mange back. And depending on the season, if you get it too late in the season, they won't have their winter coat, so they'll probably die in the winter time because they don't have enough fur. So there's really no good way to treat mange if you don't have access to the den itself to either destroy it, close it off, or treat it. We generally just say, let nature happen.
We do get that a lot. People ask questions like that, and it's just kind of part of life, and you kind of just have to let it be. I know no one wants to hear that, especially when it's like baby animals. The deer's big too. Like someone sees an injured deer and they're like, I don't want it to suffer. And it's just like George was saying, like there's not a lot of rehabbers in the area that will rehab deer. And also it's extremely, I don't think people understand how dangerous it is to be anywhere near a deer. If I've gone a call out a few times to a deer that's stuck, and it's just like, I might have to shoot it just so you know, because if I can't get close enough. So it's unfortunate, but.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the deer again too, because sometimes residents will say, well, can't you just tranquilize it in the field? Well, when we're using controlled drugs to sedate an animal, there's always a chance that that's not going to take effect right away. And the last thing we want to do is drug up an animal who then gets up and runs into traffic and causes a car accident and kills somebody, right? So there's a lot of other chain reaction things that can happen when we're interacting with wildlife, and sometimes really the best option is just to kind of leave them alone. So now if there's an immediate public safety issue, I have talked to officers that will use their discretion to dispatch that animal in the field if they feel like it's safe to do so. I can think of one exception in the last couple of years. It happened in Lombard. We had a deer that actually was like impaled and stuck on a fence. So we knew that animal wasn't going anywhere, right? So we went out into the field and we used controlled drugs to sedate and euthanize that animal. So there's weird exceptions to that. Any other questions on wildlife? Yeah.
Find a baby fawn or deer or whatever, it still has the capacity to like kick you and cause injury on you. It's, even though it's small, how strong are they?
Yeah, you guys want to talk about that?
I mean, baby deer, like fawns, there's a lot of, most rehabilitators that have license for deer, they only take fawns, they'll only take babies. So if you come across one where you know it's an orphan, like, they're not going to hurt you. I mean, I've picked up plenty of baby deer, like, I've even had them just sitting on my lap because I didn't have a container. I drove them to the rehab center.
Docile?
Huh?
They're pretty docile?
They are. They'll scream, but they won't. I've never had one bite me. Not to say they can't.
Don't have bite, but just try to struggle and hit you.
They will, but they're pretty uncoordinated. Like if you have a plastic tote, like usually that's what I use, and that seems to contain them because they can't really get traction. Keep it covered. But yeah, the baby deer, they're pretty docile. They're, if anything, once they get out of the tote, they'll just hunker down somewhere. Like I've had them just hunker down under my seat in my car. I was like, all right. And the place I've gone to most for the baby deer, I think it's out in Sycamore. Do you know the name of it? It's out in DeKalb County.
It's a rescue.
It's a rescue. They take baby deer.
Is it care?
No,
okay.
Oaken Acres, that's the word. So they're really good. They have a nice facility. But, so yeah, outside of that, I mean, they'll take, I think, anything younger than a year.
Not to jump on what, I'm sure the conservation group will talk about you guys though. Isn't there, I could be wrong, so let me pass this on. I've seen posts about, you can tell if baby deer have been abandoned or in need based on their ears, right? Like if their ears are erect, they're good. If they start to get curly, that means maybe mom hasn't been around a while, or is that an old wives' tale? Okay, I'll wait for you guys. Sorry, I didn't jump, just we were talking about baby deer so much, I wanted to clarify. All